So I'm really excited to bring to the stage Dickon Moon on talent tips for the scaling journey. So I'm going to start with your Cornish bio and then I'll go into your business bio. So he's awarded a bardship by the Cornish Gorsuch in 2024 for services to Cornish culture through rugby. He's also the longest serving director of rugby in England for London Cornish RFC, a role that he undertakes on a voluntary basis, and is proud to have been involved with Cornwall's Bill Beaumont Cup efforts over the past decade. And I'm sure you'll share some more of your Cornish connections and growing up story today. He's a partner at Fusion Search Partners, born and bred in Cornwall, and has spent 30 years in the tech sector, around a decade of which it was spent in-house running recruitment for the likes of Yahoo, Betfair, and Arise Virtual Solutions in EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. A former software engineer as well. He's also a former founder of his own headhunting firm, has been instrumental in the scaling of a series of challenger recruitment brands on both sides of the Atlantic, and worked closely with a series of top-tier VCs and private equity companies in this time. He's got a focus on product engineering, go-to-market, people, and operational leadership roles for startups, scale-ups, and companies undertaking significant strategic change. His particular interest is around helping companies as they scale from pre-seed to Series A and beyond. So I know we're going to learn a lot from you today on the next phase of this, which is the people strategy. So I'd love to welcome to the stage Dickon Moon. No, it's all right. That's my stuff. I'll take that.
That photo actually was just up there a minute ago. When I worked for Yahoo, they took photos of us all, and I was quite happy with my photo until they put it on the website, and they doctored it and made me look like I wore lots of makeup. So I actually had them take it down and put back the original one. That's the original one. I noticed something when I was standing up the back earlier. We have the Cornwall Slush'D logos either side of us here, and I liked the Cornwall to US bit in the middle here. But then when I looked at it further, I preferred that, in fact, you've got Cornwall and Lush in the middle of there. And as a Cornishman and a proud card-carrying Cornishman, that's what I feel about Cornwall, that it's lush. And I think this event will bring together all sorts of different people from different backgrounds. What I hope is that from every single one of these different methods of getting information, you get some golden nuggets. And so I really hope that from what I'm going to go through with you now, you might pick up some golden nuggets of information. Tor started off by covering off his name, and I really feel I should do that. It's an extraordinary name, and I quizzed my mother about it. She got it from a book called The Secret Garden. On my first day at school in Penzance, this lad came bouncing up to me and he said, "My name's Tony Hands." And he went, "Tony Hands." He said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Tony, I could draw it for you." That's the God honest truth. He became a very good friend of mine. So, just checking I get this working properly. What am I going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about hiring and a few tips that you might find useful when you are initially engaging with those first hires outside of your own networks. And as founders, it's a problem that I've seen repeatedly companies wrestle with. I'm also going to talk a little bit about that awkward period when you get to the point where you look around the room and begin to realize that some of the people that made that early journey with you are not necessarily the right people to take you on the next step. And it's how you manage that process as well. Now, I focus today on senior level permanent hires. I'm not going to talk about fractionals. I'm not going to talk about contractors. I understand there is a place for those hires as well, but it's a question of time. And I specialize in the senior level hires that Tor mentioned earlier, the sort of director level and upwards. So I'd regard them as doers rather than empire builders. And I'm not popular with a lot of other headhunters because I like to talk founders down from overhiring too early and not spending too much money and not giving away too much equity, because I've seen time after time after time other headhunters hire people who sit there twiddling their thumbs and have to leave businesses after 6 months or a year. And that's incredibly expensive to businesses. So I want to talk repeatedly about the need not to overhire. Now, I have some decks, a little bit like the ones Tor mentioned, that bolt on to some of my discussions today. And one of those decks talks around how you transition your team pre and post funding. And I call it no names on shirts, because typically what a founder will do, and founders as well, when they get funding, is they will try and crowbar their existing org structure into a new org structure without thinking about actually whether everybody fits and is going to make that journey. And so I implore all of you, if you should be fortunate enough to land funding, to be thinking of this the other way round, that when you start looking at your org structures, look at the org structure that you would like to build first before deciding that actually you've got a whole load of people you transition into the new org structure. I know that might be uncomfortable, but when we talk about scaling, you have to build an org structure that is fit to scale. You don't fit the existing org structure into a business and then try and make that scale. And I'll also talk a little bit about timing. Now, typically in a headhunt, if I was going to go out and work with a company that was seed or Series A on a headhunt, I would work back from when they would want the person on board, but to determine when we start the headhunt. That will be a 6-month roadmap. So if you think you want somebody on board Q2 2026, you're probably going to have to start thinking about that process beginning towards the end of Q4 this year. And I think it's really important you understand that actually sometimes you need to start those processes ahead of the money landing in the bank. The money may well be on its way, you know that it's coming, but to get the right person and not the quickest person is going to be essential to your businesses. And again, I have another deck, which I'll happily share with you, that determines the trigger points that you need to help determine where you hire and when. And actually, Tor was very fortunately somebody that I know very well. Actually, he didn't mention this, but I'll mention it. I actually hired Tor for Miro. I'll digress slightly because I've got a timer in front of me, so I know where I'm going. When Andre Couchid, who's the founder of Miro, was introduced to me by the VC Axel in Amsterdam, he had 6 people in an office. And I said, well, what are you looking for? And he said, I want the best person who ever worked for Google in product in the Valley. Oh, right. Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, that's kind of like a rocking horse poo, quite frankly. But I found him in Devon, which was, as a Cornishman, a bit of a surprise. So I'm very proud of that connection. And Tor and I actually go back a little ways and have become firm friends since. So it does differ by discipline. So it's not always going to be the hires you need to make are driven by your business. It's going to be different depending on whether you want to have sales or you're having marketing or you're having product or engineering or people or whatever. And I can go through those with you individually rather than today. So what about how? I have a pet hate. It's called LinkedIn. So let's think of a Venn diagram. Of all the people that are available to you in the recruitment market, LinkedIn only has a fraction of those. And on LinkedIn, of that group of people that are in LinkedIn, you will only be able to access a fraction of that fraction. So by addressing LinkedIn as your sole source of candidates, you're already cutting off a vast pool of potential hires. I want to be clear about that. It's incredibly expensive, it's divisive, and it's riven with recruitment companies that are just trying to build their databases. So I would always use your website first. Now, a lot of people on LinkedIn do this wonderful thing who are founders or CEOs, and they put what hiring, and they've got that little colored thing that says hiring. So I look at that sometimes just to make me laugh. I run to their websites, and guess what? I try and find where they're hiring on their websites, and it's like looking for blood and stone. A lot of people seem to bury their careers sections at the bottom of their websites, and it takes 3 or 4 clicks to get through to the information you need. I would implore all of you, if you do nothing else today, have your careers section as a drop down at the top of your website, your landing page, so that when people get on the website, they can quickly, within 2 clicks, get to the information they need to get an application through to you. It's the cheapest, easiest hiring you will do. And have a secondary thing, have a service level agreement with yourself or whoever manages your website that you'll get back to those people within 48 hours, if only to say, thank you for your application. We'll be in touch if we see there's a match. Because everybody's rejected candidate today is tomorrow's referral to your next CTO. We have a mantra at London Cornish, the rugby club I run, that you look after the poorest player in terms of quality every bit as well as the most talented player, because the poorest player is just as likely to have a best mate who's a tight head prop capable of playing in your first team. And you do not know, as hiring people, and everybody in your business is a potential recruiter for you, how the networks of the people who are applying for those jobs could help you. So I implore you to make sure that everybody who applies gets a speedy response, if only as a holding pattern. And please have your careers section something that's visible at the top of your website. Your network, you'll use your network already. And it's really the point at which you go outside your network, you're going to talk to the likes of me. Selecting a headhunter isn't easy. And you might go to a recruitment company. What's the difference? Science, basically. A recruiter tends to throw candidates who are looking to the highest bidder. If you're paying 15%, but somebody else is paying 20%, they're not going to send the CV to you. They're going to send it to the other company. A headhunter will use a much more scientific approach. You will probably have to pay them up front a little bit. And the total cost of a recruiter versus a headhunter might charge you 15 or 20% of first year annual salary. A headhunter might charge you a third of first year total compensation. Now you may ask, Dickon, that's incredibly expensive. Is it worth it? Well, when you get to the stage at which you need a headhunter, probably yes. I have never in my career had a firm complain about a fee when I found them somebody. Never, ever, ever. I should add a caveat to that, which is this. In the 12 years since I haven't worked in-house, I've been a headhunter, I've never once had to restart a search. So every time I hire somebody, they land and expand. And I'm proud of that. But it's also the truth, I don't work with people I don't like. So there's only about one person I work with. Not true, there are two. Yeah, still. Selecting a headhunter, it's not just about fees, it's about their network, it's about the free information they can give you, it's about how they can advise you to hire for yourselves, about building job specs, about their ability to actually deliver to you. Do you like them? You need to like them, I think. You don't have to like your best salesperson, but you probably have to like your headhunter. And I think for us, you should look at capacity. Are they genuinely somebody that has the capacity? By which I mean, are they already working on 12 other roles? They're not going to have the time to give you what you need. What's the longevity of their hires? People will tell you how quickly they hire. I hated it at Yahoo. They tried to measure me on time to hire. That's a rubbish stat. Cost per hire, time per hire, they're rubbish stats without longevity of hires. Because if you have somebody who lands really quickly, but they're out of your business in 6 months, that's so expensive. So look at longevity of hires. They're off limits. Oh, I've got a wonderful headhunter. He's hired for... Well, that's interesting because he's hired for all those companies. That means he can't touch any of them. So they might be a great headhunter, but they can't go to any of the companies you'd like to get someone from. Look at their off limits. Really important. And that they have clear charging structures. I hate the really mixed messages you get, people charging extra fees for using their database or perhaps having something that allows you to see into their searches so it's live. Clear charging structure is really important. And I mentioned LinkedIn and the advertising. You can advertise. You will get... I put an ad on LinkedIn last year for a client because they wanted it. It was for a CTO. I had 1,500 replies within 3 days. And so just be prepared that you are going to get inundated and you need to have the bandwidth to respond to those people. Advertising also comes at a cost. I don't think it's very scientific, personally. I think you're, again, cutting off the potential group of people that you'd like to hire. So what about hiring in Cornwall and Devon, for that matter? I go back to the point. A lot of companies these days have mixed ways of working. So if you're on site, sure, you're going to have to hire in Devon and Cornwall. I'll come on to that in a minute. But if you're not on site, if you have a hybrid method, that opens up a whole pool of other people that might be able to work for you. And you may not even have an on-site presence at all. You might be remote. Again, then you can think much more globally. Relocation is not as expensive as you might think for one simple reason. If you make an offer to somebody, and you should be clear during your process of what that's likely to be, you don't have to pay their full relocation. You just offer them an amount of money. You might say, okay, look, we're going to give you X as your base salary, and if you move to Cornwall, we'll give you £6,000 for that move. And that's it. That's the decision you have to make. You're not paying for their first 6 months rent or a deposit on their house. This is flipped around a lot in recent times. If you want to relocate somebody, you don't have to think about paying massive costs. And I do it shamelessly in London. I look for people who are of Cornish collection who are in London. If I was back down here, and I am down here regularly, I'd always look to see if anybody's got a connection. And then finally, what kind of people might enjoy coming to the West Country? Perhaps they've got young kids, perhaps they're artistic, perhaps they're sporty, perhaps they're at a stage of life where, it's perfect for them. Look at the things that attract people here. Don't look at the things that don't attract people here. I've recruited from Stornoway in Scotland to the Isles of Scilly in my time, and I've always tried to look at the things that would make it attractive to somebody. And I think that's a really important message, another one I'd really want you to take out of today. What about diversity and inclusion? I was fortunate enough to marry a mixed race woman and have 2 mixed race children, and I have been on a learning journey for 20 years. When I spoke to my 11-year-old daughter about this, and I showed her this slide, I said, "What do you see?" And she said, "Well, I don't see diversity, Papa." And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we all look at our websites, and people often say to me, "How do I hire for diversity and inclusion?" And I turn it around and I said, "Well, what are you doing about diversity and inclusion?" Because if I'm honest with you, it doesn't start with me, it starts with you. And the amount of companies I look at their websites, and all I can see, with apologies to the male middle-class men, but male middle-class men, white, on every single slide, that is not encouraging diversity. So a lot of companies switched to this slide or something similar and said that's diversity. And it was my wife, actually, my ex-wife now, who actually pointed out that this still is not good enough. Because while we're pointing that there are people with diverse backgrounds, it's not actually that inclusive. This is a far better and more encouraging photo to represent diversity in all its shapes and forms, because actually everybody's sitting down, so someone with a disability might feel this is much more of a appropriate for them. And I've worked for a company that hired all sorts of amazing people with different diverse backgrounds, and it's got a woman and she's black, and so we have a lot more encouraging diversity. It's very engaging around the room, everybody's smiling. It's a much better example. And I'd implore you again, with your websites, you don't have to reflect everyone that works at your company right now, but if you want to hire for diversity and inclusion, reflect that you're going to welcome people from every background. At the very least, it's an easy, easy, easy win. And I've used reflect, don't deflect, because actually the reverse is also true. As white men, we don't realize until we're really shown it that we are in a really advantageous world where things that we take as a given are provided to us everywhere in everything that we look at. But actually, what I've had pointed out to me in the last 20 years is the reverse is true for people who are particularly black women. Probably, I think we heard it here, the most disadvantaged group right now in recruitment in the UK. And so what can we do to encourage people from different backgrounds? And this is one of the things we can do. And how can you protect yourself from bias? Well, you can do that through using a headhunter or external bodies. Actually, you'll all have boards and non-exec directorships, and I'd encourage you to use those to help you both understand and drive diversity in your businesses. And you can get the external help that I mentioned through all sorts of non-fee-paying organizations to help you with that as well. What about AI? Well, I was at an event in America earlier this year, and the guy he wanted to say style and tone, and he actually said stone and tile, a classic spoonerism. And I pointed it out to him that actually it worked really well. to talk about AI and recruitment. And AI does form part of the solution. You can use AI an awful lot to help you transcribe interviews. It can help you with your processes. It might be able to help you locate different people that you couldn't otherwise locate, but it cannot make the decision for you. We're all humans. And no amount of times that I'm told that AI will replace me will get me away from the fact that I have been told lots of times, you will love this person when you get in the room with them, and I find out that I don't love that person. We're humans. It won't replace that, but it will help with the process. I don't go into details here on AI for the simple reason there are an awful lot of products out there. I work with some amazing AI-driven companies at the minute, which I'm happy to tell you out of ours, but it is something that will help with a lot of processes for you, so use it for that. And the market question, I get this all the time. It really annoys me. People say to me, what's the state of the market? Or the state of my market's awful. I loathe that. It's not important what the state of the market is. You could pick up a newspaper today and start crying. Ignore it. What is important is the state of your market. Whether you're a candidate looking for a new job, or whether you're a startup or a company that's scaling. It is not important the macroeconomics in the country are poor. They are not something you can control. What you can control is your world. And as we all know, and I've been a founder, it only takes one sale to turn your whole day around. And it's the most amazing feeling. And that first sale is amazing, but so's the second and the third. So get away from this concept that you can be driven by macroeconomic things. You can't. Think about your market. It's what gets me up every day. I know I'm going to find amazing companies that want me to hire for them. And that's what I want you to leave with today, to be thinking about your own worlds. That's it. In a nutshell, I'm around both for the session in the early evening, and I'm sticking around for a beer later as well. So here if you need me. And I think I'm to time.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
guys.
much. Perfect.